fight against bio-warfare all started in a zombie-infested ghost town. It was September 1998, my first and only day as a police officer.
After the events of Raccoon City, Umbrella continued setting more laboratories in secret locations. One of these locations turned out to be in the middle of the desert, close to a town called Saguaro Wells in Nevada. The population of Saguaro Wells was only 472, and just like the start of the Raccoon City incident, the town of Saguaro Wells started having disappearances of their own. Since the town was small, everybody knew about what went on in their town, so when people started disappearing, they started to take matters into their own hands. As the story begins, we see two townsfolk walking out of a bar, discussing what's been going on and who's been missing lately, when suddenly, man-sized bats appear from the skies and attack them. We then see that there's an Umbrella lab near the town where they're using these giant bats to bring in more test subjects to experiment on. The man in charge of the lab is Dr. Kalos, a mad scientist who's working on transmutation, fusing humans with vampire bats. He mentions that he only needs one more test subject to begin the next stage of transmutation, and he sends the vampire bats to get another victim from Saguaro Wells. Later that evening, everyone in town vented out their anger towards the town sheriff for doing nothing about the disappearances. He wants to try and investigate things the right way, but with all the disappearances going on, anyone can be next. So they propose to take matters into their own hands and hunt down whoever's behind these disappearances. All they know is that people start disappearing at night, so the sheriff tells them to go back home later in the evening, and that should keep them safe for now. But that same evening, a stray cow keeps a boy away from town longer than he anticipated. He reaches the town, but seconds later, the vampire bats arrive and begin devouring the cow in front of the boy. He tries to escape, but a bat latches onto him and bites him in the neck. The townsfolk hear him cry out for help, and they open fire on the vampire bats. They manage to scare them off and save the boy. They take him to the sheriff's office, and it turns out that the boy is the sheriff's son. They take him to the hospital and apply stitches on his neck, but as you all know, the infected bite is all it takes to bring an end to the victim. The next day, the boy's vital signs became very peculiar, and his skin began to rot. And by the next morning, he became a full-fledged zombie. The sheriff lost his son, all thanks to Umbrella. Now that things are getting out of hand, Officer Leon S. Kennedy has been sent to investigate the town disappearances. The assailants have been described as bat-like creatures of human proportions. To Leon, this could only mean one thing: Umbrella is behind it. While on his way to town, he arranges for backup since he's sure he'll be needing it, and he meets the town sheriff to get all the information he needs. As he speaks with the sheriff, we see that at the Umbrella lab, Dr. Callis is upset with one of the doctors called Dr. Vedley. He's in charge of sending the vampire bats to Saguaro Wells and continue bringing more test subjects, but since they did not succeed in bringing the boy as the next subject, he's furious with the delays of his next step towards transmutation. He only needs one more test subject to begin the next step of transmutations, so he threatens Dr. Vedley to send the bats back to town and bring in one more test subject, and if he doesn't, then he'll be the next meal for the vampire bats. That night, they release the bats and send them back to town. Luckily, Leon is on the case, and everyone in town is staying inside their homes to avoid getting captured. Leon awaits in an open area in the Saguaro Desert, ready to take them on. The vampire bats arrive, and Leon unloads as many bullets as he can before they get close enough to reach him. The bats take more hits than ordinary foes, but Leon manages to use his tactics to gain the upper hand. More and more bats keep appearing, and soon Leon appears to be having trouble dealing with them. And in the end, they manage to knock him out and carry him out to become the next test subject that Dr. Kalos needs. As they approach the cave that contains the secret Umbrella lab, Leon wakes up in time to try and escape the fate that lies ahead. He reaches into his backpack to pull out a sharp blade, and since he's being carried out by one of the giant vampire bats, he has to time his next attack perfectly, otherwise they'll be scraping him off the rocks. Leon slices the bat's leg off and just barely manages to grab onto the ledge of the cliff, right under the entrance to the cave. The rest of the vampire bats arrive, with one of them limping, missing its leg, and screaming in pain. So Dr. Kalos orders Dr. Vedley to kill it, so he puts it out of its misery with one shot in the head. This angers the rest of the bats, seeing one of them get killed by their own creators. But before they can attack their creators, Dr. Kalos presses a button on the computer which sends out an eerie noise that only harms the vampire bats, keeping them in line. And shortly after, Dr. Kalos presses another button on the computer set to kill Dr. Vedley for failing to bring in the last test subject. The vampire bats instantly attack Dr. Vedley and begin eating him alive. Leon notices that it's the machine which is controlling them, and it looks like a sonar device, so he prepares for his next plan of attack. Meanwhile, Dr. Kalos threatens the other workers to get back to work or else they will share the same fate as Dr. Vedley. He then puts another of his workers known as Dr. Bondra to replace Dr. Vedley and send the vampire bats out to a much bigger town called Elko. But the time for caution has passed, and he wants more test subjects that same night so he can begin the next step of transmutation by the next day. The bats proceed to exit the lab and bring more victims into the lair. Leon takes cover and sees them exiting the lab. He mentions that the squadron of bats spreading the G-Virus will be next to impossible to stop, and it's gotta end now. I'm not sure if Leon thinks that the vampire bats are infected with the G-Virus since Dr. Kalos doesn't mention what virus he used to create the man-sized vampire bats. But it's possible that Leon thinks they have the G-Virus because he's always dealing with hosts infected with the G-Virus. Hours go by, and Leon awaits the arrival of the vampire bats as he has another plan ready to take into action as soon as they arrive. Finally, they begin showing up. Dr. Kalos begins the transmutation process, but now is the time for Leon to put his plan into action. He informs his backup that he's going in and to give him about half an hour and then they can release the birds. He jumps down into the lab while throwing grenades and firing in all directions. Leon then makes his way to the back of the computer that controls the bats. Dr. Kalos sends security forces to take him out. They begin firing at Leon, but they are instantly ordered to stop shooting, otherwise they'll damage the controls. So they rush towards Leon and bring him down together. As they bring him towards Dr. Kalos, Leon asks the doctor, "So that machine does control them, huh?" Dr. Kalos agrees, but lets him know that it's too bad he'll be taking that knowledge to the grave. Leon then quickly kicks the computer, hitting the return to base button. They throw him to the floor and call in the vampire bats to rip him apart. As the bats fly down at his direction, Leon proceeds to detonate a bomb he installed in the computer before the security team took him down. The bomb goes off, taking down some of the vampire bats, but with the explosion, this gives Leon the opportunity to flee the area before the bats see him. Leon mentions that it was a gamble trying to overload the machine and making the sonar shriek turn on their mentors. And as you can see, the bats all begin attacking everyone in the lab, tearing them all to pieces, including Dr. Kalos. Leon exits the cave, his backup team arrives, and he escapes into the helicopter. As they flee the area, you can see that they even brought in the airstrike and they prepare to blow out the mountain, taking down the entire lab, along with the experiments and the transmutation research. Leon is congratulated by his pilot friends, and he then receives a message from his superiors. He is informed to proceed immediately to Sector 36A. They got reports of massive G-Virus mutations all over the area. And this is where we reach the end of this story. Since this story took place after the Raccoon City incident, we know that Sector 36A isn't Raccoon City, so we're left with a mystery location to another G-Virus spreading chaos. It could be the location of Leon's next adventure in the video game series, or yet another location that is only seen in the comics. We'll have to wait and see.
Bottom line is, you have the experience we're looking for. So if you want this to end peacefully, you really have only one choice. Work for us.
And just like that, I found myself in the service of the US government.
And that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if so, please leave a like, share with others, and if you want to see more videos like these, subscribe to this channel. You'll find more than just Resident Evil content like Dragon Ball, Gantz, Tekken, Mortal Kombat, and more. And don't forget to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Tumblr to find out when the next video comes out and whatever random posts I make. Anyways, I'll see you all in the next video, and remember to have an awesome day.